Hello grade 8s, how are we doing today? Yeah, also doing quite well, thank you. So, maybe second thing second, what topic are we moving on to now? It's on the board. Cool, so let's move into a bit of the good old algebra and see what it's all about. So, algebraic expressions. We can use algebra to write expressions, like word expressions, as algebra. So let's run through some of these examples together and then go through a few questions. So our unknown number, we're always going to call x for now. It could be any letter, but let's call it x for now. Okay, so 5 more than x. So if x is our starting point and we want 5 more than it, then sometimes what's quite useful is think about it in terms of a number you already know. So let's say I asked you, what's 5 more than 7? Well, how would you get there? You would go, well, I'd take my 7 and I'd add 5. So in other words, you're taking whatever your starting number is and you're adding 5. Cool. What about 2 less than x? Well, again, think of a normal example, think of a number and go, well, what's 2 less than 7? Let's go for. Well, then you'd go for 7 minus 2 to find out what's 2 less than it. Well, you want to find 2 less than whatever the number is. So let's go x minus 2. Okay, so these are all going to work like this, and I'll leave it to you to read through all of these examples, but otherwise let's maybe take a half of x. Well, you might do this differently. One way to look at it is to say, well, if I were to ask you what's a half of 8, well, you'd say 4. Well, I hope you would, right? Let's throw that in as a question and see. So you would have gone, well, what's a half? Well, you might have gone, what's a half? Ooh, what is that? A half of 8. So you might have said, oh, well, half of x, well, that would be half of x in the way, and that's a perfectly reasonable way of writing it. Or the example here has got it as x over 2. In other words, what's a half of 8? Well, you've got 8 and you're dividing it by 2. Okay, so that's some examples. We've got the square here. As I said, I'll leave it to you to read through all of these, but let's hit you with a few questions and see how you do. So, how would you write 3 more than x? Cool. Well, I'm interested to see what you said. I would go, well, 3 more than must mean that I'm adding. So I'm going to go for x plus 3. Okay, next up. How would you talk about 5 times x? Well, I'd go, it's x and we're timesing it by 5. So you may write x, it's 5 times x, so x times 5, or you might have written 5 times x, both perfectly reasonable, but we just like to write it in a shorter way and write 5x. Now notice, and we did this before, is our x's we write as these cursive x's just so they don't look like times. Okay, cool, let's keep going. I'm sure we're doing well. 7 less than 4 times x. What is going on here? I'm going to need a new color to figure it out. Okay. 7 less than 4 times x. Okay, so you've put your answer down and let's run through it. 7 less than 4. So 7 less, I think, means that we're subtracting 7. But what are we subtracting 7 from? Well, 4, we're going 7 less than 4 times x. Now notice that the 4 times x is 4x, it's 4 times, and the times comes before subtracting. So we're taking our 4 times x and we're subtracting 7. So we would write that as 4x minus 7. That's 7 less than 4 times x. Okay, let's run through 2 more examples here. 10 less than the square of x. Now, give it a go writing down. I'm going to try and interpret how you've written it down because it's quite difficult to do just with the keyboard. Okay, so 10 less than the square of x. Now think about how it's written and your order of operations. What are you going to do first? Square x or take 10 less than it? Well, in how we written it, we said 10 less than. So we're going 10 less than. That means that we're subtracting 10. What are we subtracting 10 from? 10 less than the square of x. The square of x, so x squared. Now if you wrote the square of x is x times x minus 10, perfectly fine as well. Okay, our second last example, got another one down there. is the next consecutive number after x. And so before you give it a go, just think of if the starting number were, what do we have, 7 we're stuck on earlier. 7, how would we find the next consecutive number? Now consecutive means the next whole number, the next integer. So what would the next one be? Well, it would be 8. So therefore, how did we get from 7 to 8? Okay, we plus 1. So the next consecutive number after x, maybe I'll do that in that color. Well, we took x and we just added 1. So if our number was 7, we plus 1 to get 8. Okay, and just for consistency, let's put that in that color as well and rub that guy out. Okay, let's just check. I'm pretty sure I'm covering some of these things up. So what I was writing there was x plus 1. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do these ones and we'll look through them together on Wednesday's lesson. Okay, then exercise 2. I've got 4 pink dots that I've chosen. Write each of the following algebraic expressions using words. Okay, so the first one, how would you write 3x? What does that mean? Cool, I'd go 3 times x, or a number times 3. Okay, what else have we got here? X plus 9. How would you describe what's going on there? It's like we're in this dreamy state. I'd say we've taken a number and we've added 9. 9 more than a number. Okay, let's go for this third one here. 5x minus 2. How would you describe that in words? Okay, you could have described it quite differently. I'm interested to see how you do it. You might have said 5 times a number minus 2. Or you might have said 2 less than 5 times a number. They all amount to the same thing. And to be honest, it's not about the exact nature of how you're writing it down or saying it. It's just that you're getting into a good sense of what does this mean? How could you interpret it? So our very last question for today. How would you describe this one here? Now this I am very interested to see how you do, because I always think, how do you describe where there's so much going on? We've got a square root, we've got 3 times a number, we've got 1 less. So would we describe this as the square root of 1 less than 3 times a number? That sounds like you can interpret it only in one way. And that's what's going to be interesting about how you thought to describe this. Did you say 3 times a number minus 1 and the square root of that? And really, as long as you've engaged with it, that's what we're interested in at this stage, as opposed to going, oh, there we go, that's the perfect answer. So note that in these ed puzzles, I'm going to give you a tick. A tick doesn't mean that you got the perfect answer. What it means is that you've engaged well with it. Okay, so optional if you want to is do a few more of these. Write them down. I think that one of the other teachers has put some of my solutions together, so I'll share those if you want. But otherwise, this is more than enough engagement for now. And the last question is, do you think this is cool with the music or not? Thank you. No, enough. Thank you. Okay, enough of that. Okay.